And hello, everybody. It's the FiveStack, the top 5 breaking news stories happening at this very moment. I'm Zev Shalev from narrative.org. And look who's here, filling in for Dean Blundell, the great Denver Riggleman. So you like being called the great Denver Riggleman.
Great. The great Denver Riggleman. I don't know. It sounds like I'm redneck royalty, Zev, like I'm some hillbilly king,
Well, you might be a king in some ways. I mean, you've certainly, your credentials are there. You've former congressman, as everybody knows, also the best-selling author of a book called The Breach, which we'll talk about in the context of today's news. You've also a veteran and with incredible history in the U.S. intelligence services. So that brings you with a lot of insight into the news that we're going to be reporting today. So all of that makes you a king in my world and a king in everybody else's world that's watching today. So thank you very much for being here, Denver Riggleman.
Oh, my heart is full of that.
It is an incredibly busy news day, as every day is. Every time I turn around, there's just like another assault of news coming. But have you ever seen this president as unhinged as he is right now? I mean, the Jesus stuff really, I know it's kind of dumb, and I know it's just him gaslighting people, but whoa, it's sort of, he's lost it, right? From Easter on to now, he's been on an anti-Christian crusade, which doesn't seem to me like a good way to win, confidence in your base.
It's an anti-Christian crusade. My guess is when he was, adjudicated for sexual assault, it was also an anti-Christian crusade, right, Zev? And he started this. It's almost like he went down this path, right, Zev, where first he was remember he had the Pope hat? Remember he did the whole Pope where he was the Pope sitting, and now he's progressed. I don't know if it's dementia or he's to a point he doesn't care because, as me and you have discussed, his family's already mined the taxpayer for billions. As you saw, his latest net worth is at $6.5 billion. So I think at this point I think he feels like he's already won regardless of the outcome of MAGA wins in 2028 or not.
He might feel like that, but he certainly is taking, maybe should send Vance over to see this Pope. The last time we sent Vance over to see the Pope, he died. So, maybe there's a way to use Vance in that way. But this Pope is actually, I think, doing something pretty remarkable because he is the first American Pope. He's bringing along with him this sort of a moral authority that America has that normally you would associate with the U.S. presidency. Normally that's who you turn to for moral authority. But in this case, when you've got an immoral U.S. president and one who's doing all the wrong things on the world stage, having this sort of counterpoint Pope who's really speaking with moral clarity about what's going on in the world must really annoy Donald Trump.
I think it does. I think part of it is that Donald Trump is so used to the yes men and women around him. I think, Zev, he just cannot take any type of criticism, but he also believes in his narcissistic splendor that he's right, regardless of it the Pope, if it's other world leaders, if it's all of NATO, if it's the EU, if it's the Strait of Hormuz, right? If it's people doing end runs, if it's everybody doing agreements, trade agreements, except for Trump. I just think he's incapable of really any type of cogent thought at this point based on not only the people around him. He's been enabled by the worst people. But I do think, as he gets close to 80, I think when you combine that dementia with those incredible character flaws that he has, I think you have somebody who's going down the rabbit hole or the toilet bowl very, very quickly, bud.
Since you've been a congressman, you've done some interesting things. Or maybe you did it before. You had your distillery before. I know that. You make good scotch, amongst other things.
Bourbon. Yeah, I wear a Scotch. I got a Scotch shirt on, Lagavulin, and I got my bourbon hat on, Silverback Distillery. So I'm very global. I'm a global spirits coordinator.
I love that. I love that you do that. You'll have to send me a bottle if you're allowed, because I really want to taste some of your own homemade. Are you allowed to, or will I have to pay like?
Oh yeah. I mean, I can carry 5 liters in my suitcase when I come see you. So I guess about 7 bottles of liquor that I'll bring you. How about that? I can do that.
Don't need 7, but just one's fine. And the other thing you're doing, can you talk about some of the other stuff you're doing, the AI stuff and the other interesting work that you're doing in your kind of off time or retirement as a public official?
Goodness gracious. Yeah, I have 2 companies. Well, I have one company called Riggleman Information Intelligence Group, which is Rig Tech. We just did a company in UAE. We're about to do one in Canada, as you know, buddy. And so we're going global. But part of that company, Rig, underneath that is something called Hoodle, Humans Out of the Loop. That's helping with insurance and claim adjudication and verification for patients and doctors. We're trying to help them against big health companies to make sure they get the healthcare that they need. And we're very successful in that. The other side that we're doing in Rig is actually over-the-shoulder engineering. And that's looking at actually situational awareness with stationary full motion video, but also drones. So I have two big things going: insurance and medical, and I would say civil defense and security on the other side, my friend. So pretty eclectic, and we've grown very quickly. I just finished a big Series A round. We just signed 2 massive contract vehicles. And so in the last 2 years, we've been fairly successful in the AI automation space and the full stack technology space. We're doing okay, buddy. We're doing.
That sounds really good and important work, especially when it comes to drones. We know what's going to go on with with our ongoing aggression around the world. But let's get into the top 5. This is the top 5 breaking news stories of the moment. I'm lying about number 5. We're going to start with the breaking news. So this is really interesting. What's going on with the blockade of the blockade is what some people are calling it. China is now saying that they are not going to stand for America's blockade of the Straits. China has warned it will keep the Strait of Hormuz open, at least for its own shipping, in direct open defiance of the U.S. naval blockade that went into effect yesterday morning. And that's because they carry a lot of oil, of course, to and from Iran, and they intend to keep using Iranian ports despite America's intention to stop them from doing it. A sanctioned Chinese tanker became the first vessel to push through the strait today, despite the blockade. According to ship tracking data, Beijing's foreign ministry also said the blockade is dangerous and irresponsible, and made clear China will not comply before the war. More than 120 ships transited the strait every single day. In the past 48 hours, there have been 28. China imports roughly 1/3 of oil through this waterway, but it is just on a geopolitical level really difficult for Donald Trump to execute this blockade when China, which is the number 1 user of that strait, is saying, no, we're not going to follow it. F off, Donald Trump. We're not doing this.
Yeah, I think a lot of people need to look at some of your reporting before we came on air, right, Zeb, with Russia and China starting to get together a little bit on what they're going to do about the Straits of Hormuz. And that really was surprising to me. The other thing, too, and I think this is the thing I want people to know. If China feels like there's some type of aggression against them in the Straits, what do? We're already overextended. We already have Trump rattling his swords about Cuba again today, which is really interesting, isn't it, Zev? He had to have some kind of distraction on what's going on. But the other thing that China did today, and this is the thing I want people to do, right, is to look up something called the FN-6, the Fox November-6, which is a very capable infrared man-portable attack defense system, shoulder-fired rocket, right, missile, infrared, that China said that they might send to Iran. So now we're getting to the point where you have large superpowers like China saying, not only you better let our ships through, but if you don't do that, we also have a plan B. We're going to make sure we outfit the Iranians with man-pads, infrared man-pads. Now, when you're like, well, gosh, Deborah, what does that mean? Well, if you look at the F-15, which it looks like was shot down by infrared man-pad, radar warning receivers on jets do not pick up infrared. These are the heat seekers that you hear about. So that's the other thing, too, that bothers me, Zeb. It's not just what China's saying about the Straits of Hormuz. It's that they're working with Russia. They want to have a 4-point plan. This is from you. People need to look at Zeb's work that he did. But I am also worried about China talking about arming Iran with very effective systems against our aircraft.
Absolutely. That man-pad story is so interesting because Xi has denied it, but of course he's going to deny it. They weren't going to send it to them directly with Chinese box markings on it. They were sending it through intermediaries. So it's probably still happening according to US intelligence. But this idea that you've got to have, a revived Iranian defense system against the planes that America might be using to control Iranian airspace as they claim to have right now, that is devastating news for Donald Trump. I mean, the one claim he has, and which is proven to be true so far, is they do sort of have air control over that area. Now, if they don't have air control of that area with this new Chinese man-pads, that presents a real problem for Donald Trump's claims that he's won this war again and again and again, which is because it doesn't take very much to rearm the Iranians with that supply chain from both Russia and from China.
You've nailed it. You nailed it. What it comes down to, he might be doing a lot of Truth Social posting tonight because his really good friends, Xi and Putin, don't like him anymore. So, it's just, it really, that's what he's thinking about right now. Is like, wait a second, I said how much I was impressed by Xi and impressed by Putin. Trump's already threatened NATO to help him in the Straits. He's already isolated our allies. Now he's isolating who he wanted to be our new allies, which is Russia and China. He's isolating them also. And that's because of the massive amount of, I would say, incompetence that he has in administration. But the simple fact is, and I've said this before, Zev, is that he has wanted to actually utilize these wars, these conflicts, to put money in his pocket. It really is about self-enrichment. And that's something that, again, that bothers me is now you have superpowers that have very capable weapon systems that could be pointed at our jets and our airmen, right? Our soldiers, our Marines, our sailors. And it's because of the awful decision-making, but it's because of the lack of foreign policy experience and the sycophants that surround Trump today.
I mean, if you think about it, it all sort of works for China and Russia. They get increased oil prices right now. That's great for them. Their economy is thriving again. China gets to act like the reasonable power on the block. They get to be, hey, we can bring peace, we can bring order to this mess. While America seems like it's off on an extremist ledge. And what you're saying there about the money that's being poured into the Trump family's companies and personal accounts are massive. I mean, we're talking about billions of dollars potentially at the end of the day being poured into them as they become involved in every Pentagon accruement and acquisition that happens. It seems your reporting on this was terrific in the last few weeks.
Thank you.
You were really detailing how Trump, and especially Don Trump Jr. and Eric, are involved in almost every aspect of new technology that the Pentagon is busy buying.
It's amazing. I think it was one of the networks or one of the magazines said, oh, they were savvy investors. I'm like, are you kidding? Savvy, probably corrupt investors is probably the word you want to use. Yeah. Savvy doesn't mean corrupt. If I have a daddy who's telling me he's going to go into a country and we're going to do some more stuff, and 11 days before that, his son Eric Trump is investing in Extend Drones, an Israeli drone company that controls the AI battlefield for drones. Or they have two investments, American Ventures and 1789 Capital, that now own multiple drone companies, the whole supply chain stack, which I outlined, in one of my Substack, articles that I posted. And I really appreciate you bringing that up, Zev. But I think people need to look at the amount of money that's just being funneled directly into the pockets of Eric and Don Jr. And it's extraordinary. $750 million in contracts. They're also part of $20 billion contract vehicle with Anduril that happened in March, right after the war started. So all of this is happening, and it seems like the Trump family is very lucky that they seem to invest or get on board with companies that have contracts just days before it happens, Zev. God, they're so lucky.
That is a lot of luck. It's
how fortunate.
Something. And everyone's on the chat is asking about Ivanka. And of course, Ivanka isn't necessarily directly involved, but Jared Kushner is definitely involved. And, they're still married. It's still the same family. And they're all gaining a lot of money just by extending these talks and by making a mess of the Middle East.
It's crazy. You look at Jared, and Zev, you probably have better numbers on this than me because I'm trying to remember right now, but I believe it's $100 or $200 million that a year he's making just on administrative fees through the Middle East, through his holdings, right? And that's just that, right? Yeah. It's probably more than that at this point. So again, the money is coming in from all sectors for the Trump family, and they've been able to really corner the market in ways we never thought that an American president would ever do. Number one, owning the military-industrial complex. Number two, the crypto scheme that they have going on, which they're saying between 9 and 10 billion in crypto holdings above the 6.5 billion in wealth. And then you have the Board of Peace, which is the biggest money laundering grift in the history of the United States, is the Board of Peace. And so, that's the three ways that the Trump family is capitalizing on the American taxpayer.
Explain that to everybody, because maybe people don't understand how the Board of Peace is such a grift.
The Board of Peace, an alternate structure where Donald Trump is, what did they call him? The leader for life.
Yeah,
the Board of Peace, something like that. Chairman for life, right, Seb? Right. And so for $1 billion a country, it's very, very American, Right? It's so ridiculous. But what's not ridiculous is that each country has to pay $1 billion for entry. And listen, my information's a little bit old because I was going to do something on the Board of Peace. But I think 9 countries have paid into it already, with some paying premiums. And I know another country just came in, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. But if you think about it, $1 billion being routed through countries to be a member of the Board of Peace, which is just a big payoff scheme. The other thing too is that Trump just used $1.25 billion of American taxpayer money and gave it to the Board of Peace. That was supposed to be for USAID. So there you have it, my friend.
He gave the USAID money to the Board of Peace. Did he really?
Yeah, I think it's. I think I'm right. People need to look it up, source me, make sure I'm right about who that was, make sure we're looking at the right monies. But it was. I think it was 1.25 billion of American taxpayer money that he funneled back into the Board of Peace. Listen, Trump's getting $1 billion from each country, and he's using taxpayer money to pay his bill to go into the Board of Peace. And then contracts will come out of the Board of Peace and different types of functions. All those functions will be Trump-run companies that actually get that money. So you have this massive sort of tax-free holding in the billions and billions of dollars. What they'll do is they'll have companies that are linked to friends and allies of each country and to Trump. Those are the companies or the entities that'll get those flow downs, and those flow downs will be backed into or pumped back into companies in the US or around the world, right, where he can make money that way. Or they'll use that money to invest back into the DoD, so back into the Department of Defense or intelligence community. So those are the things that I think. I'm speculating, but I bet I'm damn close, Zev. I bet I'm
I think
close.
you are. I mean, I think this is a criminal organization that's basically finding its way to insert itself into every global monetization process. And that includes every time there's a peace deal to be made, every time it's almost like a protection racket, Maybe it is a protection racket, really.
It's what it is. Yeah, it really feels, it smells like it, Zev.
Yeah,
it does.
yeah.
It smells like a protection racket to me.
Yeah, well, it very well may be. The 6.5 billion you mentioned, that's a new figure that came out. That's how much Trump is worth. He used to be broke, if I'm not mistaken. He used to be, at the end of his first term, he was practically broke. So how is he now worth $6 billion? And then on top of that, there's another, $10 billion of crypto wealth is what you were saying?
Yeah.
Wow.
Real estate holdings, deals that he done, World Liberty Financial. I mean, we could go on and on, right? You're talking about the sons. You're talking about the entire family with Middle East wealth. You're talking about Qatar. You're talking about the deals that he's done all across the Middle East, specifically, right, with specific type of investment vehicles. And, that money just grows and grows and grows and grows. And when you're president, right, you can pretty much extort anybody you want to. And that's really what it comes down to, buddy, right? That nobody's going to say no to the president of the United States when we have, what do we have? About a $30 trillion GDP, regardless of that 40 trillion in debt that we have. Right. But anyhow, there's so much, America's a big place. It has huge money flows, and it's easy to hide them. And when you have a president that's immoral or amoral, right? No moral compass at all. And he's there just to enrich himself and keep himself out of jail. He's going to do anything he can to perpetuate that money cycle. And I've been telling people, like, well, Trump's, 32% approval ratings of, and, you have things of that nature. However, I feel like in my, it's not even in my heart, it's looking at the data. I believe the reason he can act with such impunity and put out Jesus memes is they feel like they've won financially, generationally. It's very difficult to disentangle all those financial instruments that the Trumps hold globally. And I don't think we'll ever know the real value of their holdings and their wealth. I think it's that hidden. I think they have money flows all around the world in some of the worst places.
And intertwined in absolutely every sector. That's a good point. That's the breaking news at the top of the show. Let's get into the number 5 story, also breaking today, just a couple of hours ago. A new woman is standing at a podium with her attorneys making fresh sexual misconduct allegations against Democratic Representative Eric Swalwell of California, who announced his resignation from Congress yesterday. Of course, he also gave up his gubernatorial campaign in California. Let's listen to this latest accuser and what she said with her attorney, Lisa Bloom, earlier today.
She's speaking now in California, Beverly Hills. Let's watch.
In 2018, while I was living and working as a model in Beverly Hills, and I also owned a fashion software company, I had contact with Eric Swalwell on 3 separate occasions after meeting him socially. He offered me connections to further my software company, And I also had an interest in local politics. He invited me to 2 public events. I knew he was married at the time and that his wife was pregnant. He was my friend. On the 3rd occasion, I believe he drugged my drink. I only had 1 glass of wine. We were supposed to go to a political event, and he said he needed to get paperwork from his hotel room. When I arrived at his hotel room, I was already incapacitated, and I couldn't move my arms or my body. He raped me, and he choked me. And while he was choking me, I lost consciousness. And I thought I died.
Hard to listen to. Also very detailed, and according to other people who are more familiar with the story than I am, very similar in claims to what he's been accused of elsewhere in these other women that have come forward. It's so disappointing, isn't it, to have Eric Swalwell be this guy. I mean, of all the politicians you would have hoped would have turned out to be a decent guy, he ain't it.
Well, I got some, personal experience with Eric Swalwell. I know him. And, what's interesting is that I went after him pretty hard on the Fang Chinese spy thing, right? And the fact that it was sort of an open secret, that, it was alleged, he had an affair, with a Chinese spy. And that was one of the things that he had to sort of live down and try to circumnavigate around. And I remember I went after him pretty hard, and he had reached out to me directly saying, hey, this is really rough. And I said, okay. I said, I'll cease and desist, but I said, I'll back off, but so,
I'm watching
I've been doing this, doing this a long time.
Yeah.
And, so the other thing too about this is I always sort of kept my distance from Eric. And the reason is sometimes past performance is indicative of future performance. Now, it's not that I thought that, I wasn't 100% sure about any of the allegations. There was no way I was going to have access to any classified material on any issues with foreign entanglements that Eric might have had. But I also was aware, right? There's always rumblings in Congress. And since I was there with the 116th, you hear bizarre little tidbits that sort of ripple through the congressional House floor. And it was never that he was doing something. It was always like, yeah, there's a couple of reporters said, yeah, we don't like to really interview Eric Swalwell. That's all I really ever heard. So seeing this is pretty incredible to me. It's also devastating based on the fact that I've had family members raped. And I think that when you see something that horrific, the anger that sort of surges through you, Zev, is almost, it's almost hot. It's absolutely on an edge, because when you're in a position of power like that, you have access, right, to things and opportunities that other people don't. And if you use that power for evil, it gets to me. It gets to me. Now, these are alleged, and I get it. But if this turns out to be true, all of these accusations, he'll be one of the most prolific predators in the history of the U.S. Congress. And that is an amazing statement.
That is an amazing statement.
That's how I'm feeling about it right now.
I'm so glad you have shared all that, and also shared your experience with him on the Chinese spy story, because people forget that story. But regardless of whether she was a Chinese spy or not, I don't know if he ever really denied the key allegations that he was having a sexual relationship with her.
Never. Never
while
denied
he's
it.
married, while his wife was pregnant, I think at the time. It was not he didn't really say that wasn't true.
Never said it wasn't true. And that's something to me that if, Zev, fortunately, I'm no James Bond, as you could tell, right? But, I've been trained in certain situations, and, and I've had, multiple occasions where, especially in Eastern Europe, where they try to honeypot you, as people might be familiar with that term. And I have had associates that were honeypotted that I had to debrief.
Mm.
They're sitting and I'm like, hey, there's a reason you were probably robbed, right? Or
Right.
there's a reason that information was taken from you because this person was an operative. And that's about as far as I can go because I actually had to do these things.
Mm.
So I think when I saw this story, I'm like, yeah, yep, Zev, it smells that way, right? It's
Yeah.
that same thing, right? But you don't want to cross that Rubicon without specific proof and data, because then you become like everybody else as far as accusatory in a way that becomes either polemical or, it's not the right thing to do. But seeing this type of stuff, and based on why I kept an arm's length for so long, based on my training, it goes to that when people are or have a specific type of profile, like Donald Trump. They're going to do the same things. Usually there are some people that are redeemable, and they are, and I've done stupid things in my life, right, that I got called to account for, and I had to, I had to work through them and do the right thing. So, but it was never that. I mean, my God, I stole a Snickers bar at 5 years old. That was, and so, this is bad shit.
Yeah.
And I think that's what people need to realize, is that if this is true, again, the prolific nature of this is astounding and brutal and horrible.
Especially
and
when he's
women.
the guy going after Jeffrey Epstein and the whole Epstein class. I mean, it seems to me that is the most brutal takedown of the Democrats, in that, if he's one of the team that's out there trying to prosecute the Epstein story, and he's doing the stuff behind the scenes, it is such it's such a failure.
I know Ruben too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Gallego, and I can't imagine, they were very close, and and I don't know, and I was sitting here thinking, I was like, do I text Ruben? Maybe I'll wait, because I got a feeling that, listen, Ruben, I can't imagine, Ruben being part of any of that. But again, it's just an insane, awful, horrific thing. And the hell with the guys, right? It's the women we need to worry about, right? I really don't care if Eric Swalwell's life is absolutely incredibly destroyed if it turns out to be true with all these women.
Well, it is interesting about Gallego. He was at a presser. Wasn't at a press. I think it was just a gaggle outside his congressional offices, and they were really going after him. I thought his body language was very defensive, almost not believable. It's hard to believe that he really was lied to by his friend for so long about all these things. It's hard to accept that as the baseline argument that he's going to use. But he really did look defensive. He didn't look like he was in a position where he was in control of that moment.
The thing about truth and facts is that not always in politics does it come out as people. If I told your viewers that good always wins, I'd say, Denver, you're an idiot. Good does not always win. Bad wins all the time.
Especially
evil wins, especially in politics. But every now and then, there's a facts train that people get on. There's a metadata specific thing that happens, right? Where you got the phone calls, you have the text messages, they're validated from a specific device, and you're like, uh-oh. And if Ruben's telling the truth, that metadata line is safe. If he's not, the way that they're digging into it right now, he ain't. So that's what it is, Zev, right? Ones and zeros make the best witnesses, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. And as you say, this is all about the victims. This is really about them. And, one wonders how much of DC is like that, and you've been around those halls. How much of this kind of stuff happens all the time in DC? I mean, one thinks of, who was that guy, the former congressman who, it'll come to me. He left Congress last time. He was voted out as paraplegic, good-looking guy, who made the claims
Cawthorn?
about Madison Cawthorn, who made the claims about, it was your class, wasn't it? It was your team, wasn't it around your time? Who made the claims about the cocaine parties and the what's going on in the congressional ranks and all these things that he was invited to, and that's probably why he lost his career there, but.
Well, he's trying to get back in, right?
Yeah.
And I think I have it's stories like, and so you hear these things, right? Because you're in there, right? So I don't know if you remember Rep. Van Taylor from Texas. Good friends with Dan Crenshaw. Van came in with me in the 116th, but he was on either WhatsApp or some of these messages got out where he was dating. He was having an affair with who they called the ISIS bride. And some of the things that he'd like to be done to him were pretty insane. And that got out. And I think you have multiple members that have been caught up in these situations. And what's interesting, right? A lot of them have been Republicans. I think the Swalwell thing is a massive hit to the Democrats that were going after Trump on the Epstein side. I think when people engage in behavior like this, even though it doesn't, that doesn't mean that, anybody else in the Democratic Party was engaged in such awful, nefarious activities. But what it does mean is there's a credibility hit on a level that's hard to ever come back from. And, people are like, Demmer, come on. Nah, it's just the way it is in Congress. It's just the way it is. But the behavior there can be quite extreme. Fortunately, I think that I won the award. I had a reporter tell me I was the least creepy congressman in Congress. I think I won that award. So, thank you very much. As least creepy. I thought that was actually, she was an incredible reporter. She's like, you really are the least creepy. Because whenever I did interviews, I would open every door in my office. I would never allow, right? If it was a female reporter, even if it was after hours, I would open every door and I would make sure my scheduler knew that we had somebody in the office. So it's just the way that you present yourself and the way you conduct yourself professionally. I think that has to be done at every moment when you're somebody in a position of power, because that power can be abused in such awful and heinous ways.
Because this was an open secret. Swalwell seems to have been an open secret in DC, at least amongst Democratic circles. For them not to have done something sooner is really appalling. And also these congressional offices are sort of like apartments, right? They're massive. They've got lots of space. There's things can happen inside those halls, not just, people live there sometimes, right? It's not just offices.
I was taught to live in my room for 3 months. It was the worst 3 months of my life. I got an apartment so quick because McCarthy at the time said it's very bonding when we live in our office space. And I'm like, this might be, I feel like a vagrant, right, as a sitting congressman. And, now the office is huge, right? I had a rollout bed and you have big TVs and I have 3 separate massive areas. But it's ridiculous. And I got out of there pretty quickly. But there's some people that still live in their offices and been for a long, long time. I believe Tim Burchett from Tennessee still lives in his office. Wow. So you have those type of things that are going on there, buddy.
I could ask you more, but I'll leave it there because there's some other questions I have, but I'm not sure you want to answer. Not specific to you, just about other people in your class. Let's get into the number 4 story, which is another story that's absolutely huge today and that you raised earlier on when we were putting together this show. This is out of ProPublica. Great publication, does incredible work, investigative work. And they published a bombshell investigation yesterday. The conclusion is simple and it's quite devastating. Every institutional safeguard, everyone, that prevented Trump from overturning the 2020 election has been dismantled. The people who held the line are gone. The people who tried to steal it are now running the election machinery. This is the story. This is a very cool little headline they have. It's called Inside Trump's Effort to Take Over the Midterm Election. It's quite serious when you look at the details of all of this. You're looking at the very same people who try to steal the election are now in charge of it, and they're taking away every safeguard.
Yeah, I mean, I reported on this. As you know, me and you, Zev, talked about this. I talked about the new executive order that was being made, 2-3 months ago, that mirrored the executive order that Sidney Powell tried to utilize to get Trump to rationalize not only nationalizing the elections, but seizing voting machines and declaring martial law, which Marjorie Taylor Greene was behind that also, the martial law declaration. So all that was happening with Cleta Mitchell, with people like Heather Honey, who's now in charge of elections for Trump. It's the same.
I'm going to pause you there because that is really interesting. Heather Honey is a conspiracy theorist. I mean, like a real conspiracy theorist. She made us shit up. I mean, it wasn't like just a little bit. It was like everything she said was completely false. And she came up with that whole conspiracy over the, where was it? Was it in Mexico? Where was it? I don't know wherever it was. They had that recount. It was live on TV. All that stuff was made up by Heather Honey. And she is now in charge of the election management team for the federal government.
That's right. And, and what's amazing is the same people like Patrick Byrne,
Mhm.
the billionaire, the Overstock CEO. He's probably not a billionaire. He's probably just in the millions now. But he's also helping write a new executive order. So back in people, and I know, I wrote about this, but in 2020, right, you had Executive Order 13848, which was about foreign interference. And they thought they could use that to seize voting machines and to overturn the election. But then Sidney Powell said, I can write another executive order. And that executive order was in draft form when the lawyers around Trump are like, Sidney. So there's that, right? And the other thing too now is that Sidney Powell's, the Cleta Mitchells, the Heather Honeys, the Patrick Burns, remember Rudy Giuliani, obviously, but that whole group of individuals are now trying to craft a new executive order, and everybody can look this up. I think it's like 14248 or something, but that executive order is even more generalized to nationalize elections, and they can seize voting machines. They can put National Guard in certain places. It actually it mobilizes ICE. You have all that happening also. So they're trying to do the same thing. So what ProPublica wrote is one of the most important stories, I would say, of the year, and it should be front page everywhere. And kudos to ProPublica. I'm going to take a little bit of credit because that menu of options have been out there a while. I wrote about it, and for the last few months, been telling people it's coming, and here we are.
Yeah, you've done some great job getting the word out on that, and also in the book, The Breach, which is all about the 2020 election, is remarkable and really important that everyone read that as well, because it talks about how January the 6th happened. It talks about the investigation in Congress into that and how very little has actually been done. I mean, when you look at the January 6th committee's findings, in fact, the exact opposite happened. We have less safety guards. We have all the wrong people in these positions. Everyone who was there trying to protect elections, well, those are all gone. It doesn't leave one feeling very secure about future elections, except for the fact that elections are still state-run things. I mean, are you worried about the ability to actually run free and fair elections in November?
Zev, I have to answer this question very carefully. I don't want people to be hysterical, and words can be taken out of context. So I'm going to be very careful. And you're going to love this answer. It's like yes and no. Mm-hmm. There's no way that 50 states with the thousands of jurisdictions can be manipulated. That's not going to happen. There's too many moving parts, too much risk, too many people still that want to do the right thing. But also there's something called a risk management theory of that, where the number of things that have to go right for conspiracies that large, you're thinking about different voting systems, hundreds of people involved in each state, different types of processes, different types of rulemaking, different voting times. It's just incredibly difficult to stage or to fix an entire election. It's ludicrous. It's almost impossible. But when you're talking about specific districts, like swing districts, my friend, process always beats technology when it comes to stealing elections and disenfranchising people. And when you're talking about process, and you're talking about, say, getting rid of mail-in balloting, or you're trying to limit electronic voting, or you're trying to do only paper ballots, or you're trying to disenfranchise people, or you're trying to say there's foreign interference because of electric interference, right? Because of cyber attack. That's how you do it, is that you create the conditions for conspiracy theories or for illegal activity as defined by your own investigators, like the Heather Honeys, like the Cleta Mitchells, like the people he's putting in charge top down in the ProPublica article, where those swing districts that are most important can be trifled with. They can be messed with. And that could be, there's only really 7 to 10 big swing states. You're talking about maybe 70 to 80 swing districts that are really in play in the 435 districts, and that can go down to one county. So what these individuals will do, and they're learning from 2020 and 2021, is they're going to concentrate on the one jurisdiction, say Fulton County, say they're looking at Atlanta, say they're looking at Detroit, Michigan, looking at Antrim County, right? They're looking at all these areas where you have a lot of blue votes, and they're going to say that's where it happened. They're going to dork with the election at that level. And that's where you have trouble, because they're going to say, oh my God, the election was stolen. Well, they don't have to steal everything. You only have to narrow your targets to very specific precincts and mess with those. And that's my fear. So that's why the yes and no answer that I gave you there. So.
That's a very nuanced answer and an important one to make that distinction. It's interesting. We were just watching Orban's defeat in Hungary the other day. it was so decisive that I don't think even if Orban had rigged any portion of that electorate, and he probably did try, knowing the genealogy of his history.
They tried.
It didn't work because so many people showed up and voted for the other side for Measure. And this is clearly going to be that kind of turnout in November. I mean, I think you can do what you're saying in a close election, and you can probably get some of these districts not to go the way they would have normally through votes. But to do that on a broad scale, if there's a landslide coming, if there's a huge blue wave, that's going to be very difficult to do, I think. I hope so.
I think you're right. I mean, you'd have to actually have martial law, or you'd have to nationalize elections where they run the elections and simply throw out ballots, or simply don't allow electronic voting. I mean, that's possible. I don't know if it's probable, but you've got to remember, this is a guy who wanted to institute the Insurrection Act. He wanted to institute martial law. He wanted to seize voting machines. Yeah. And all he has to do is slow roll this and make this into a constitutional crisis, because the main objective of the Trump family is to make money. And the longer that he can draw this out, the longer he can do that, the more money they pour into their pockets. And again, it's about them winning the long-term financial game by utilizing the taxpayer as their diving board, right? Yeah. That's really what it is. And that's how they're going to splash, right? Is they're going to splash in those coins like Scrooge McDuck. And they're just going to have all that money generationally. And I don't know, again, how we disentangle or claw back that money, but you're so dead on, Zeb. It comes down to these small precincts if it's a close elections, but if it's too big to rig, I hate to use that. I know that's a cliche. But if there has to be an overwhelming mobilization of voters in 2026 to overcome any shenanigans in the 2026 election.
He's in his second term. He doesn't really need to be interfering in elections unless they can come up with sort of third term. It's not likely to happen. Why is he doing this? He's doing this to stop the investigations that are going to come out of the House if Democrats take over. He's doing this to stop the impeachment process that will follow directly after a new House is sworn in January next year. That's what he's concerned about, because he knows how much corruption that he's been involved in. He knows how much grifting is going on. He's even offering to pardon his entire staff. I mean, that's how corrupt this regime is. So that's his number one concern, and that's why he's doing this. He's looking to stay out of jail, for one thing, but he's also looking to stay out of the crosshairs of a Democratic Congress.
Yeah, the Democratic Congress will be a problem for him. The issue that he does know, though, is that he can be impeached, but he'll never be convicted in the Senate, as you know, right? And
I don't know if that's true. Did you see the latest Cook report? It's they're leaning for new Senate seats towards Democrats. I mean, it's not looking like it's a foregone conclusion in the Senate.
It's what do they need? A 2/3 though, right? Zeb, in the Senate. And so, I think it's going to be very difficult to convict, but here's what impeachment does do. And I love that you brought this up. It completely stymies anything he wants to do to fund the government in a way that enriches him and his sons and his family. That's the issue. The Democrats could really lock down the purse strings when it comes to how they fund the DOD, how they fund the intelligence community, right? Because you're talking about them wanting $1.5 trillion budgets. And when you look at the Trump family with their 1789 and American Ventures funds, with the fact that they're invested in multiple drone companies like Unusual Machines, Power Us, Extend, right? They're even downstream. They're even linked, sort of adjacently to companies like Red Cat underneath of Anduril, right? So you have all this stuff that's happening. And what happens is money flow might stop. The issue that you have, and this is what I want to tell people, if they're 2 and 3 year monies, or they've already gotten these huge contracts up front, it's very hard. You can't claw back that money. It's going to be very hard to disentangle. So they just got to stop it. And the American public, sadly, might have to be happy with just stopping them now and letting them move on with their riches. But if it's me, my friend, and I was in a position of POTUS, it would be nonstop hunting for me. And I will tell you this, I would try to claw back every cent. It would be probably almost impossible, but I would make life a living hell for the Trump family if I had to say about it.
I mean, I think there's a lot of people running in November, specifically on that ticket. The idea of being able to take down this presidency is, and to just bring some accountability back to our system is number one in so many people's agenda as they head into this election. The number 3 story on the countdown is Donald Trump, and now picked a fight with the Pope. He's also handed him the biggest platform on earth. Pope Leo XIV, the first American-born Pope, has spent 48 hours on the front pages of every newspaper and doing what no world leader has managed. He looks Trump in the eye saying, "I have no fear." That was his quote today. And today he escalated, issuing a formal letter warning that democracies risk sliding into what he called majoritarian tyranny. He didn't name Trump, but we know who he's talking about. It's remarkable how he does this all the time. In sort of criticizing somebody, he's giving them so much power to ascend and take the light. In this case, Pope Leo had no problem taking that light.
Yeah, I mean, I think Pope Leo is the one pope you'd probably want in a bar fight with you. And
Chicago,
it's exactly right. He is, and I think I'm not overtly religious, Zev, but I will tell you it's nice to see this type of pushback. But it's also nice to see a major religious leader looking somebody like Trump in the eye. And I know I keep going back to this, but it just makes me so angry that we have an adjudicated, sex pest, as our president, and a felon, and somebody with all the fraud behind him, like Trump University, and the things that he said about women, and his illegal activities, and his self-dealing, and all the things, and his Xi, Putin, Kim Jong-un love affairs and bromances, and this guy who's completely cut off NATO, who's destroyed our, I would say, reputation for generations here in the U.S. The thing is that we have a pope that's standing up to somebody like that is pretty refreshing to see, my friend.
I agree. And, the more he attacks, more Trump attacks Pope Leo, he's called him weak on crime and very liberal and terrible for foreign policy. Of course, none of those things are the things that popes are meant to do. The Italian prime minister pointed out this to Meloni. She was pointing this out to Trump, that they're meant to advocate for peace. That's what popes do. It's sort of normal. But the fact that Trump is taking such offense to this, such personal offense to the notion of peace at all is very revealing about Trump. Not that we needed to know that before. But it also gives up the mantle of moral authority, as I said earlier. He's basically saying to Pope Leo, "Yeah, you go tell everyone what's right and what's wrong. I'm just going to keep being the criminal, sex offender, rapist, whatever it is that he is, and you take over the moral authority." I mean, he's weakening his own presidency with probably the strongest thing that any American presidency has, which is moral authority.
He thinks that his base will follow him no matter what. He is down that line. And there was a time, I think a lot of people ascribe like some kind of supernatural Teflon to him, or that God will protect him, which a lot of the people believe. Even in my close family, there's individuals who believe that he's ordained by God, the imperfect vessel to execute spiritual warfare on the ungodly, because this is a Christian nation, and as far as they are concerned, and that anything outside of those parameters is demonic. And so I think he believes I think he believes now what's being said about him. And this is a person who's really had way too much of his own bathwater. He's drank a lot of it. And I think when you drink that much of your own bathwater and you're already in a narcissistic sort of megalomaniacal sort of vein, which is he is, now you see this insane behavior. And I do believe this is a tipping point on a level we've never seen, especially with the Jesus meme. It's so out of bounds. It's so ridiculous. It's not even a funny joke. They said, well, he was trolling, or they say he said he was a doctor. It's ludicrous, right? He's an inveterate liar. Yeah. He's completely off his rocker. He's a criminal. He's a sexual threat to people. He's just an idiot on wheels. And we have to put up with this. But you know what? On the other side, the brilliant part about them is that it doesn't matter, because they've already mined all this taxpayer money through contracts, through crypto, and through the Board of Peace. They're really walking in tall cotton, as we say down here. Yeah. And it's really difficult for me to get my arms around that, because I do feel like in some ways financially they've already won.
I mean, that's why I call it the greatest heist. It's such a huge, huge crime spree that these guys have been on for decades now, but certainly during this administration. And as we're watching them get away with another crime spree, except really what it is. I mean, they basically robbed the bank. They're just making a getaway. They've got a few years to try and do that. We'll see what happens in November, but any victory for the Republicans will secure that. It is good to see the Pope say, "I have no fear." I can imagine bumper stickers are going to show up anytime with that saying on it, because it is incredibly evocative. We've seen him give away the moral authority to the Pope. He's also giving away his alliances to NATO, and this is a significant story breaking at number 2. Two things happened in the last 24 hours that tell you a lot about where the world is heading. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, who had a minority government, he's not a career politician per se, but did win quite soundly in the last election. Well, he now has a majority in the Canadian Parliament, and that's a very big deal. It's hard to get a majority. He's been able to do that by getting people to cross the floor, mostly from the Conservative Party. But it means he has kind of a very clear ability to govern for the next couple of years, and an ability to build Canada as not an ally of the United States, but as a opponent, an adversary, a competitor to the United States. I can't even believe we're saying those words, but that is where we are. I mean, the Canadian system, whether it's through voters or through this walking across to the other parties, has basically handed Carney a majority government because of Donald Trump.
Donald Trump has done wonders, right, for Mark Carney and the Liberal Party. And boy, Dean Blundell, our good friend, would love this topic, wouldn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he would.
Here's what I think about it. I think right now Canada could be the leader as a trusted partner in NATO, because right now America's not trusted by NATO. Hell, America's not trusted by any country in the world right now. We've reneged on so many of our promises, our treaties. We haven't been there for NATO. We've denigrated them, demonized them. We have some, I want to say Lima Delta. A military person will know what that means, but a Lima Delta like J.D. Vance, that's out there saying these awful things. Somebody who has no business being anywhere near the seat of power. He doesn't have the mind for it, but he doesn't have the moral compass to be a true American on the world stage. He's a joke. He's an embarrassment. And I think that's what you're seeing is Mark Carney is not an embarrassment. He's almost a technologist, right? He's down the line. He wants to do what's best for Canada, but he's also one of those moral globalists who believe that things can be done in a way with integrity and ethics that America can't do right now with Donald Trump as president. And I think that's what you're seeing with Canada and why they won the majority, and why you see sort of this. It's a fresh new alliance with the U.S. being the redheaded stepchild. Nothing against redheads, but the redheaded stepchild.
Are you redheaded?
No, buddy. I wish I had red hair.
You could have had in the past. It is interesting because it is important that the Prime Minister of UK as well, Keir Starmer, and the French President Emmanuel Macron have called a meeting this Friday in Paris. They're bringing 40 nations together to build an independent mission to reopen the Strait of Hormuz without the United States. I mean, they're basically doing NATO without the United States against the United States in Iran. And this meeting's happening on Friday. This is not a theoretical thing. This is an actual practical meeting. And it's coming as soon as Friday to figure out how they're going to basically get Iran and America out of the Strait so they can sort of reopen that thing to the world.
It's shameful. MAGA wanted a nationalistic, isolated government, and they got all they voted for. What is that old quote, Zev? Like, you get what you voted for, and you get it hard. I
haven't heard that one, actually, but it's a good quote. Elections have consequences, for sure.
Yeah, it's that. But, I think I'm pretty close on that quote. But what a shame. I don't even know what else. I don't. But I don't know what else to say about it from how you just couched it. You get to the point you're speechless. So it's shameful. It's incredible how isolated the United States is, but they're isolated by really what I believe. Well, I don't have to even factually a criminal element in the White House. We have a felon that's president of the United States. And so I don't know how any other country would want to deal with a country that would vote for a felon.
And going back to the start of the show, this is the number one story, is all about the blockade, the cracks in the blockade. You can know Saudi Arabia is joining the Chinese and saying this has got to be lifted. You've got this new NATO that's being formed without the United States. You've got Carney winning a majority, which is built around being anti-Trump. You've got the Pope openly critical of Donald Trump, to the point of, of a front page feud with the guy. Donald Trump is about as isolated and alone in the world. And unfortunately for America, he is America right now. And the world hates him, and are beginning to organize their power and their force to remove him. I mean, I think that's what I'm seeing around the world. It's not just, let's open up the Straits of Hormuz. It's, we really don't like this guy. What are we going to do about him? And that raises all sorts of stakes when you really play that through. I mean, is America really willing to go to war with the world for Donald Trump? Because, with our traditional allies, maybe not the world, but our traditional allies that we have come to respect and have fought by our side, they might be fighting wars against us in the future.
Yeah, and I hate saying that. Zev, okay, no I hate beets. Mm-hmm. I hate beets. They're the worst food on earth for me, right? Yeah. I hate olives. I do.
I like beets.
I hate olives.
I know what you're doing.
I hate them, right? I hate beets. I hate olives. But rabid coyotes that I hate, they're dangerous. Mm. Rabid coyotes are dangerous. And I think that the countries hate him, maybe, but I think it's different. I think it's they recognize the instability, the danger, and the mental issues that are coming out of the White House. That's sort of a different feel. It's almost a feeling of dread that they have to stay away from any type of American deal making. And that's why I was saying I hate beets. I hate's it's a thing, right? Yeah. I hate beets. It makes me gag. But if I see a rabid coyote, right, that's dangerous and that's different, right? You have a different reaction to that. And I think that's what's going on with the countries. I think they see a very dangerous animal they can't control. And I think they just want to keep it in a fence. But they also know that it's the biggest animal, right, that they have here on the globe when it comes to military power. So it's a 700-pound rabid coyote that's being held back by a small chain link fence. And I think that's the issue that these countries have and why they feel like that they have to ally together because they believe that the U.S. is actually, and I don't think I would ever say this, but I think many of them look at us as a foe now. Mm-hmm. And that is hard for me to even say, honestly.
As a pariah, really, a pariah state. And it's hard to imagine. I agree with you. It's kind of shocking when you really look at the way the world is aligning, but you got China, you got Russia, you've got, not Russia, let's exclude Russia, but you got China, NATO, the countries that were Saudi Arabia, all today about the Straits of Hormuz, saying that, Trump has gone way out of line here. And the natural extension of all of this is, it's a chain link fence. Maybe we can keep him there until 2028 and we will be able to turn this around, but maybe we can't. And maybe countries like Canada are preparing for what they're calling a great war against the United States. I mean, it's not like, and they may never get there, but they have to prepare for it. So that's what they're doing. They're preparing. I bet you NATO, some countries in NATO, Denmark, are doing exactly the same thing. We've heard that from inside of Denmark. Yeah, you've been there. So is America? Americans contemplate this? Are Americans really understanding that the stakes aren't really just about waiting for the next election? The stakes are much, much, much bigger. That we are, huge, a pariah to the world.
Yeah, he's the commander-in-chief, Zev, of the United States Armed Forces. The next election is very important, but again, we have other issues, right? And he might be afraid of that, but he is still going to utilize that mantle to do things that we can't even imagine yet. I think I can. I mean, he's already saber rattling on Cuba again, and he's already talking about Greenland again. So here we go. And I think the Orban loss, if you throw that in there too, I think he is rattled. And I think when you rattle a dementia patient and they're out of their cage, you don't know what they're going to do. And I think that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, it's really a good way to end the show, although a very depressing way to end the show. But it's, I try to find a way out of it that's kind of hopeful, but it does really underline how important it is that everyone starts to organize and starts thinking about this not as, do you want your kids to be going to war against Canada or Great Britain for this dude who's busy, he's crazy. By all accounts, he's just either crazy or too old or manipulated or whatever it is. He's not, fit for the role. And it's just sort of where we are right now. I want to give everyone a chance to find your incredible work, because you've been doing so much incredible stuff on your Substack, which you've just called Denver Riggleman, I think, or have you called it The Breach?
I'm a very complex man. Yeah, it's called Denver Riggleman.
It's a good name. It's a good name. It's a unique name. Are there any other Denver Rigglemans in the world? I don't think so.
There's two more that I know of, my dad and my grandfather. I told you I was hillbilly royalty. I'm Denver Lee Riggleman III, my friend, you know.
Oh, really? I didn't know you had a third.
Yeah,
that changes everything about you.
Sure. Royalty, man. Royalty.
Well, I did have one other story for you, actually. Thank God for one other story. This was on the Washington Post front page today, and it deserves a mention. So there was this big Coachella thing. If you've ever heard of Coachella, I'm sure you've heard of Coachella.
I have, yeah.
I've heard of Coachella.
Barely.
So,
old, man. Barely.
We have a new prime minister in Canada, Carney. There's an old prime minister being Trudeau, Justin Trudeau. And there he was with Katy Perry, enjoying private time as he's allowed to as a citizen, as a former prime minister. I'll play some of the Instagram because that's important. Oops, there we go. Oops. It's coming. So this is there he is, Justin and Katy Perry at Coachella. He looks a little bit, calm. And there's nothing wrong with this. This is fine. But people think it's wrong to have, a former prime minister in this kind of.
It is wrong. You know what's wrong about this? This is not allowed. You cannot wear your hat backwards as a former prime minister. This is absolutely awful.
It is douchey, isn't it? It is douchey.
Look at me. Look how ridiculous. Hey, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
That doesn't look that good on you.
Forward.
Right.
No.
That's more practical. That was the Washington Post today.
Could I get away with this look? I mean, I don't know.
You could. I've worn my cap backwards on occasion.
I can't believe he's wearing. He should be just absolutely pilloried for wearing a cap backwards. It's against the laws
it is.
of West Virginia.
But Virginia. I agree with you. I think that he doesn't look that great. On the other hand, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool that we have a former prime.
Good for him. Yeah. Hell yeah, man! I go to concerts and drink stuff, and I'm with my beautiful wife, and we have pictures like this, and we have a great time. My God, I want to go see Billy Idol. He's almost 68.
Billy Idol's still touring?
Billy Idol's touring. I think I'm going to go see him in Virginia Beach. He's going to be touring. But you know what's not going to happen, Zeb, is I'm not wearing my hat backwards. The hell with that.
As long as you promise that that's the case, we'll be very happy with that. Look, it's a love story to end the show. Donald Trump's not ending his day with the same way Justin Trudeau is ending his day. That's for sure.
What was it in Dumb and Dumber? He must work out.
Yeah, he must work out. He must. The great Denver Riggleman, royalty, as it were, from Virginia, and the author of the book The Breach, plus a former U.S. congressman, and everyone's must subscribe to Substack. Thank you very much for being here today, filling in for Dean Blundell as the co-host for the FiveStack. It's great to see you, Denver.
It was an honor, Zeb, always, my friend. Thanks, buddy.
We'll do it again sometime. Thanks very much for being here. And everybody at home, have a great day. We'll see you again tomorrow on the FiveStack with another big guest host. See you then. Bye-bye, everybody.